The young, well-groomed Camilla had always lived by the principle that all important decisions were made for her by those closest to her. She was used to this model and did not resist. She did not even think about what would be better for her. Obedience was so ingrained in Camilla's subconscious, due to her strict parents, that in later life she could only obey. Since elementary school, the girl's strict mother Scarlett forcibly sent her to an art school and made her attend classes regularly. The family believed that her love for art, and especially her employment in this field, would increase her daughter's chances of making it in life. Camilla was very dependent on her parents and loved them, so she didn't refuse and worked hard with the teachers, trying to do well before her classmates. The couple, Scarlett and John, were not starry eyed, so they had high hopes for their pretty daughter, who was already being looked at by guys. Camilla was meek, so she tried to make life easier for them, and after graduation from college, she firmly accepted their decision to marry her off. Her parents picked out a groom for her too. He was the son of a wealthy businessman, Daniel. The man was 7 years older than his young chosen one. But that did not stop anyone. The decision of the girl's parents was more of a bargain than a union for love. But the bride did not resist. "Don't be afraid of me, sweetheart," Daniel told Camilla at first meeting. "We will become one family. We'll share all the hardships and joys together." "I know, I'm ready for it," the girl replied, like a soldier who only had to put up with the conditions of stay and strictly follow the instructions. But after the wedding, Camilla's fears were not confirmed. Her husband turned out to be pleasant and cheerful. He liked women's attention, but more than that, he liked to entertain his young wife. At first, Daniel appeared everywhere with her and introduced her to all her friends and companions, and they prophesied him a strong marriage and healthy children. The family lived in Daniel's house. He went to work at his father's firm, and Camilla provided the comfort of home. After taking a closer look at his wife, the man realized that she did not have a strong character, and he adopted the tactics of Camilla's parents. He began to push his wife around. "Where are you going in that ridiculous dress?" Daniel told Camilla, not ashamed that he might offend her. "This is a business dinner with my parents. Everyone will have to discuss plans, not your simple-tone dress. Other wives are more interested in their looks." "I'm sorry, honey. I'll go to the salon tomorrow. I'm just busy with the household chores, and I don't go out too much." "Come on, just get yourself cleaned up. You're living off the shelf and complaining to me about how hard it is for you? Other wives can take care of themselves and make borscht. Don't make me doubt my choice of a spouse." Often, Daniel took his anger out on Camilla after failures at work, failed deals, or lower sales volume. Then he would always find something to complain about. The woman endured everything and hoped that her husband would change after her pregnancy. He would be gentle and caring, she thought. But the man only got angrier because of Camilla's clumsiness and absent-mindedness. Sometimes he would come home from work well past midnight, terribly drunk and angry. Then he would make a scandal out of nothing, scaring a pregnant and sleepy Camilla, who would hug her belly and pray that this burst of rage wouldn't finally subside. Daniel could even accuse her of infidelity, suspect her of some kind of dating, but he never got beyond accusations. After the birth of baby Henry, peace was briefly established in the family, but soon Camilla, who was managing the baby on her own, began to notice new strangeness. Now she began to suspect that her spouse was cheating on her, and he was not even hiding the signs. More and more often, the woman noticed traces of lipstick on Daniel's clothes, sweet perfume, and hair on his jacket. One day she got tired of it, so she asked Daniel directly, "Do you have someone on the side?" The sight of the outraged man didn't scare Camilla away. She looked at him confidently and waited for an answer. "Are you crazy?" he called out at once. "You're always sniffing something, suspecting. Don't you like your life? Don't you? I haven't spent enough on you? What are you missing?" "I asked a simple question. Why are you making a scene?" Camilla answered while she still had courage. "Why are you getting so angry? I notice things I don't like. To be honest with me." "Honest? Well, here's the truth. You're disgusting and ignorant. I already regretted marrying you. So yes, I have a woman, and more than one. I'm tired of hiding. It's even better this way. Pack your things and get out. I don't need you anymore." Camilla was shocked at how conversation ended. In her mind, it was the cheater who should have lost something. He should have felt guilt and remorse. But breaking up with her was a big relief for Daniel. Now he could do whatever he wanted. But the woman had nowhere to go with her 5-year-old son in her arms. After several years of marriage, Camilla could not turn to her parents for help. In marrying her, they felt that their parental responsibilities were exhausted. And in addition, the end of the woman's marriage meant great shame for her family. They felt that she had let them down. Camilla had been living with her husband like a powder keg for weeks, not knowing when it would be over. And then one evening, Daniel came home from work and said, "That's it, Camilla. I'm tired of living like this. I have found the woman I want to live with, so vacate my house." "What about our son, Daniel? Don't be so hot, let's talk about it." "I've already made up my mind. I found a house in the country for you and Henry, with all the conveniences. It'll be easier for you." Camilla cried all night. She understood that her husband was adamant, so she stopped trying to convince him not to get a divorce. Henry did not understand what was going on in their house, why Daddy was kicking him and Mommy out, why he was abandoning them. "Mommy, Daddy doesn't need us anymore? Is it really so?" the naive boy asked. "Daddy will visit us. He's just having a hard time. Don't worry, we'll get through this, I promise." The woman kissed her son, and she didn't know how she was going to be sole provider for the baby. Once she saw the house Daniel had prepared for her and her son, she was horrified. Camilla was expecting an old abandoned house in the wilderness, which urgently needed repairs. There was furniture inside, but the dwelling was blown in by the wind because of the gaps in the window. The doors and floorboards creaked. "How are we going to live here? It's a terrible place," groaned the woman. But her husband unloaded her things, said goodbye to Henry, and left, so as not to hear any more discontent. There was nothing to do. The woman calmed her son down and began to make a new home. The day after the move, Camilla, an elderly neighbor Zoe visited and invited her and the boy to her house. "Don't be shy, honey. Come on, let's talk. I'll make you a cup of tea," she said. Being alone with a kind stranger, Camilla could not help telling her about all her sorrows, about her oppressive parents who did not want to know her, about her husband's cruelty, about his cheating and eviction. "What a hobby!" Zoe shook her hands. "What kind of normal man would evict his wife and child? What a bastard!" "Well, nothing. Everything comes back like that. Your husband will suffer, believe me." Over a second cup of tea, the childless neighbor shared her worries with Camilla. Since then, they have been on friendly terms, and Zoe offered to help a single mother and babysat Henry when his mother was at work. She took a job at the grocery store on the main street. The woman was not used to this kind of work and the cavalier manners of the locals. In her spare time, she continued to draw and paint landscapes. The places here were beautiful, and nature never ceased to amaze. Camilla always carried a simple pencil and an album with her, so she could sketch the place she liked at any moment. She could not afford paints. She had to take care of Henry, and sometimes pay Zoe for her kindness and time. One morning, a middle-aged man walked into Camilla's store. He noticed the album the woman had left on the counter, and began to look at the landscapes with interest. "Excuse me, is this your work?" Edward asked. "Yes, sorry, I forgot to put it away. May I help you?" the woman asked readily. "May I see it? I'm a painting enthusiast, and I was curious. From what I've seen, you certainly have talent." "No, it's just for myself." Camilla was embarrassed, but the man was persistent, and she handed him the album. At school, and when she was a student, she was often complimented on her drawings, but there was no sincerity in them, the usual politeness. But Edward was seriously interested in her sketches. The art connoisseur seemed a little sad to Camilla. He was older than she was, dressed tastefully, attractive. One could tell he was creative. "If you don't mind, I would like to see your paintings, if they are available. I often go to exhibitions in the city, and I can present your work to my organizing acquaintances." After their first meeting, Edward began to visit Camilla more often. They met after her work and talked a lot. For the first time in her life, the woman met someone with whom she was never bored. They talked about high and beautiful things, about what they were striving for, what they would still like to achieve. Over time, the acquaintances grew closer and became friends. The man became a frequent guest at Camilla's house and played with Henry. The boy was fascinated by the aura of an interesting man. Edward never came to visit empty-handed. He became so close to Camilla that she let him help with her household chores and cooking. And Henry rushed to him as soon as he appeared on the doorstep and told him who became his friend among the local kids. One afternoon, when the adults went with Henry to a picnic in the forest clearing, Edward became ill. That's when Camilla found out the man's terrible secret. It turned out that a year ago, he began to suffer from headaches, sometimes fainting. Doctors made a distressing diagnosis: brain tumor. "My God, Edward, why didn't you tell me sooner?" Camilla cried in the hospital, squeezing the man's hand. "I didn't want pity. I wanted to be friends. I understand if it's too much for you," he said aloofly, although he was agitated. "And what's the prognosis?" "The chances of recovery are slim. If I agree to the operation, there is no guarantee of full recovery." "I will be there, you hear? I will not leave you," Camilla assured her friend. Her heart was broken, but she tried to be strong, to support Edward, to share her strength with him. "I'm afraid this is an empty undertaking. Better give me the folder from my briefcase." Camilla did as she was asked. The man asked her to read everything in the document. It turned out to be a will. According to it, all of Edward's property went to Camilla and Henry. They became heirs of a 2-story house with a garden and a car of foreign brand. The woman refused everything. She was emotional and did not want to accept the fact that her close friend, the man she had strong feelings for, would soon leave her. Then the friends made an agreement. The woman signs a will, and the man agrees to the operation against all odds. For several days after the operation, Edward balanced on the verge of life and death. Camilla called the hospital hourly to see if he was out of the coma. Doctors said that there was only hope. After work, leaving Henry at Zoe, the woman ran to the man's room and sat by his bed, shedding bitter tears. She could not lose him, just not when she found true love. No one better had ever been in her life. Camilla even thought that Edward was sent to her by heaven because they were so perfect for each other, only they were silent about their feelings. But she always noticed his glances furtively, his light touches, his care. She would have given anything for the man to wake up. "You're here," Edward wheezed as he opened his eyes. "Edward! My God, I'm so glad to see you." Camilla cried immediately and stroked the man on the cheek. "I won't let you go anymore. I won't let you go." "I was counting on it." He smiled weakly. "Now that I'm alive again, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" She let out a sob and shook her head. It was the best gift of fate she could have imagined. One day, Camilla and Edward went into town to spend a romantic evening together in a fancy restaurant, which was held by a friend of a man. The woman was surprised to recognize Daniel in the valet of the establishment, who had been ruined by the very mistress for whom he abandoned his family. Camilla pretended to not recognize him. To her, the man was a forgotten page in the book of life. Now she was happily married to Edward, who arranged for her to exhibit her paintings. Daniel recognized Camilla, but did not dare to approach her, ashamed of his position. He had not seen Henry for many years and did not know that his ex-wife was preparing to become a mother for the second time.